We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
All right. We're live. Should we do a countdown?
Yeah, probably best for you, right?
All right, we'll do a countdown. I mean, we're live, so let's count it down. 3, 2, 1. I'm Nicholas Ayers. He is
Adam Serwinski.
Dude, you're totally slow on the draw.
I know. It's the delay. Anyways, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th edition of the IAOA Collabcast, a podcast about insurance agency owners, by insurance agency owners, and for insurance agency owners. As always, I'm Adam Serwinski, joined by the often imitated but never duplicated or folded brimmed Nick Ayers. In tonight's session of Collabcast, we'll be chatting with a man who shows us what ingenuity, persistence, and automation can do in our industry. He's one of IAOA's founding members. He's the owner of an independent insurance agency, mortgage brokerage, and financial planning juggernaut. It's Mr. Grant Botma. So, Grant, I want to let you know before we begin that we've set up tonight's questions as a series of if-then questions, and depending on your answers, we give out the then statement will give you the next question. So it's entirely up to you how tonight goes. So
that was
pressure.
a completely butchered joke. What he was
it was much better in practice.
What he was trying to say was that that the answers are going to be automated, and if you
Correct.
answer a certain way, then it's going to be a question another way. He totally butchered that.
A joke's even better when you explain it. So thanks, Nick.
Welcome.
Before we pepper Grant with questions from everyone and from ourselves, I want to remind everyone that the podcast is made for you, by you, and about you. So we want you to steer the conversation. You're going to see at the bottom of your Zoom screen a button labeled chat. Take a second right now, click on chat, and a chat box will open. Ask questions in the chat, make funny comments, make us laugh, say something interesting, and we will share and interact with those questions with Grant. If you have, please feel free to use that feature. We truly want this to be your podcast. So that's really the opportunity you have. So now let's get back to the reason we're all here, the beautifully coiffed Grant Botma.
Beautifully before my name. I'm not sure if that's ever been said before.
No, I drop adverbs like it's my job.
And one thing that was not put in your introduction that I think is only fair is that you are the 2016 Mortgage Broker of the Year for the state of Arizona. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I do have one question before we get started. Tell us, do you miss being an IAOA co-founder?
I don't, in the fact that I'm able to take the time that was being spent on IAOA and put it back into Stewardship, which is my company or companies. And so I don't miss that. I do miss engaging with my friends who I was able to start IAOA with. So I miss the relational part of that. I don't miss inappropriate pictures from Nick Ayers throughout the week as a result of doing business with him. But no, I do miss it, but I don't miss it. So it's kind of bittersweet.
Fair enough.
Very cool. So one of the things we always like to hear from insurance agents that we feature here on IAOA is how they got into insurance. So why don't you tell us a little bit of the background? Generally, people don't really get into insurance right off thinking I'm getting insurance. How did you get here into the insurance realm?
So when I was in college, I developed a passion for people's personal finances, and I'm an arrogant jerk, and I think that the way that I do it is always right. And I, in college, kind of wrote an idea for a business plan of how I think business should be done, and it wasn't just with mortgages. It was with every piece of personal finance: insurance, real estate, taxes, financial planning, investment management. So I just wrote this big old plan of how I wanted to do it. And I was already a mortgage loan originator while I was in college. So when I graduated college, I started my mortgage business because I already had experience in that. And it was always part of the plan to start doing insurance eventually. And a few years later, I opened the insurance side of what we do as well. So how I got started it was always part of the plan. I always wanted to do it. And why I got started is because I'm passionate about people's personal finances, and I think insurance should be done a certain way. And I want to be able to control that way.
So when you were starting off in insurance, what was your business model when you first got into it?
Business model was definitely needed to be independent. I wanted people to have quotes from multiple sources so that they could get what was best for them. So many times, our society, people will graduate college and they're lucky if they even know how to balance a checkbook, let alone properly obtain certain personal financial services and products. So we were going to be, like Dave Ramsey says, we're going to have the heart of a teacher. We were going to teach people about these things, and we were going to advise them and put them in the product or service that was genuinely best for them. So it's customer-centric from the get-go. And that included something that was different, which a lot of people don't do, and we requote at renewal every time. And we communicate the fact that we requote at renewal every time to our customers at the beginning. It's part of our process. We call it the checkup. And then we're communicating with them during that checkup phase. And that's something that we've done that's different. That was customer-centric from the get-go as well. And the kind of story behind that is, I have a personal side to that. My brother, he got married, had some kids. They got in a car accident, and he had the same insurance he had from when he was 16 because he had the same insurance agent. So he had state minimums, nothing on it. And the accident was his fault, but it was an accident, obviously. He didn't do it on purpose. And it had financial havoc on his family as a result of that because he wasn't properly insured. And his agent never followed up with him, reached out to him, communicated him, educated him, and taught him what he needed. And he didn't know. All he had was a high school degree, and he went into a trade school and was a mechanic and knew nothing about insurance. So not that I'm a knight in shining armor on a white horse trying to save the world, but I'd like to think that my agency does things a little bit differently so that our customers never fall into that trap that my brother had fell into.
So one of the things you do differently than most, I think, is in one of the three themes we wanted to talk to you about tonight is your use of automation. Mm-hmm. And so taking and implementing plans that just kind of run on their own. So can you talk a little bit about when you kind of first got the idea to automate your insurance agency and kind of how that came about?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, our insurance agency is different in that we requote at renewal every time. And a lot of reasons why people don't do that is because it requires a lot of time and work and energy and effort. And I believe that there was technology that existed that would I could implement that could make that process happen and make that happen without a whole lot of extra energy, effort, and work from us, but still provide this really unique and really cool customer experience. Moreover, I noticed and I saw, within all of my businesses, things that were being done internally and things that were having to be done externally by customers over and over again, the same time, every time. And I thought, man, why is there not any automation? I know there's technology already that exists somewhere that I can implement that can make this better. So I just kind of wanted to make a better experience for my customers, and I wanted to make internally for my team their experience better so that I could have a larger ask of them, including but not limited to requoting at renewal every time. So that's kind of why I got into it.
So what was that the first part you automated? Was the renewals like coding?
Yeah, I did two at the same time. I automated the renewal process, and then I automated the initial sales process as well. So the first agent that I hired, he wasn't a salesman. He had no insurance experience before. So I wanted to, but he was really, really good with people, and he really did a great job of educating people because he used to be a teacher. And he just owned it. He did a great job. But one thing that he wasn't wired within him was follow-up or selling or whatever. So I noticed that there was a lot of our customers that was taking a long time to go through the sales process and closing the transaction, and people were getting caught at certain stages in the sales process. So I wanted to create a system to kind of help that and implement things to make it easier for him to sell. But then also I wanted to track things better on my end as the owner of the agency. Because from day one, when I started my agency, I didn't sell insurance. I managed the agency. That was it. So I wanted to create something that made it easier for me to manage him and create a system that he could live in and work in and make things easier for him, both during the sales process and renewal.
So talk about what your steps were in kind of implementing this automation process. You obviously talked about why, but nuts and bolts, how did you go about kind of creating it for yourself?
The first part was I had to draw out and map out the customer experience. what did I want my customers to experience about me, my company, my brand, my business throughout the entire process. And I think one of the biggest mistakes business owners make is they don't map this process out. Everybody knows in their head what the quoting or sales stages are, right? There's a need to contact, and you reach out to them, and you build a relationship with them, and you find out their needs, and you analyze those needs, and you send the quotes and follow up with them, and then they accept the quotes, and then the whole process. Everybody knows what that is if they've done insurance long enough. But the problem about it is we don't write it down. And if you don't write those bullet points down, then you don't have a written process of what each of those nuances are under each one of those bullet points. So for me, it was writing it down, having a map of what I wanted this journey to look like, and then I got really detailed and granular with what I wanted the experience to be like all the way around. And I got detailed about that experience, not only what I wanted my customers to experience, but I wanted my employees to experience as well. So that was the first step. I drew out that map and did a lot of behavioral science studying on why our society thinks the way it thinks, why we as people react to things the way that we do, and then did my best to map out my customer journey and my internal employee journey in a way that matched with the way our society was at. I wanted to make sure that my customer journeys were relevant. So that was the very first step. And it's a kind of an easy step that I think anybody who's listening can do. It just takes time. And the beauty about it is once you have it written down, you can evaluate whether you implement automation or not. You can evaluate like, okay, how is our customer journey? How is our experience looking? And where do we need to make changes?
And just to fine tune that just a little bit, just so that people understand what you're talking about. When you talk about mapping a customer journey, you're talking about, okay, somebody fills out a form on our website. This happens next. And I want it to happen in such a time period afterwards. And then if they click on something here, based on their actions and reactions to what you're sending them is going to really drive where they go in this process. And that's really what you're talking about, kind of a, if this happens, then that happens type procedure. Which is unique for everybody.
Yeah. So, and it's more than just like clicks. It's how things look.
Right.
They're going to go to this web page, and I want it to look just like this because this is my brand. Or this type of person is going to be coming into our office, so I want our office to look like this way, like a living room, because I want to make them comfortable when we're talking to them about their finances. Once this thing has happened by the customer, then it's going to trigger this particular task by our CSR. And then once our CSR completes that task, it's going to, trigger this email or this text message to automatically go out from wherever. So yeah, it's getting real detailed into those stages and figuring out all the actions and reactions to things was a really, really big deal. And that was the very first step, because you can't start building automation unless you first have a map by which you want the automation to look like. You have to determine, what do I want it to look like? And then you can build the automation to look like it. And that starts by, you can just do it on a napkin or a Post-it note and just start bullet pointing stuff out.
So you have your map. Who or what did you do next to implement that napkin or that list into something that actually shoots an email out or a text message out? And where would an agent want to go next if they were to start this plan tomorrow?
Well, the first thing I did was, after making that map, I evaluated what pieces of those maps, or what pieces on that map, what parts of the experience, what tasks, what sequences, what actions could be automated based on the way technology existed right now, right? So I identified all of those things that could be automated, and then identified those things that could be human touch. And then I went back and said, all right, this could be automated, but do I want it to be automated? Because you don't want to automate everything.
And how much of your list did you end up automating versus not automating?
I automated a good portion of it, because the stuff that I determined that I didn't want to automate, maybe I initially said, I don't want to automate it, but then I found a way that I could automate it but still make it feel human. Can
you give us one example?
Yeah, for sure. Sending out quote emails. A lot of times you might think, it's something that we did all the time, every day. We're sending an email, here's your quote. And you're giving the options, or you're telling them how much things are and coverage, and might be attaching things to the email. But essentially it's around the same email every time, but you're customizing it either one to connect with the person because you made a connection with them during the sales process, or two, because their insurance scenario is a little bit unique so that you're going to address one of their needs or concerns in that email, right? So we actually automated that. I thought I wouldn't be able to automate it, but with some creativity, we actually changed the customer quoting experience, and I can show you that here today in this webinar, and found a way to make it automated, but make it extremely human.
So maybe, and just getting back to that, not to go back to myself, but did you, and we know you guys, you tend to use Infusionsoft, correct? It's one of your vendors that you use. Were they the initial partner, or did you move to them with time?
So I had my list, and I determined what could be automated and what I wanted to automate. And then I just did research. I researched a whole bunch of different companies that could do these things and figured out, okay, which company is able to do a larger percentage of the things that I want to automate, and which of these companies can do it well, and then how much does it cost for each of these. So I bounced around and looked at all kinds of different technology and all kinds of different things and systems, and I ended up landing on Infusionsoft because it was, for the money, allowing me to do the most automation.
Gotcha. So I think that really touches on Mariah's question. Just wanted to highlight that. You guys can pop in questions into the chat. And speaking of which, I see one right now, and it's asked. Actually, Dave just wanted to know if you plan to use video quotes, and if your Infosoft can easily accommodate those video quotes on your quoting emails.
Yeah, that actually answering that question also leads into showing how we automated that quote email. I can show you guys now. You want me to show you that now?
Sure. What I can do is I can make you a host if you want to get that ready, and then just cue me and let me know when you're ready to show it.
I'm ready.
Okay. So you're good to go.
Okay. So let's see here. So this right here, what you're going to see, I believe you guys see it now. This is an email that was sent out by our agent, Brandon Ream. This email was automated, and this is the quote email. And if you look at this quote, obviously the text on this is something that's automated. Hey, I've got your quote. Here it is. Your customized quote is here. Click this link. And then it, just tells them that we appreciate them or whatever. And this is the email that goes out every time. Also through the automation, because we don't put the details of the quote in the email, we do it on this link, which I'll show you here in a little bit. We also send an automated text message. And that text message says, hey, I got the quote ready just like I promised. It's here at this website. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Then I'm going to go back to sharing the screen that I want. Let's see here. I believe it's this one. All right, so they get this link and it goes to this website. So I'll show you an example of this guy's. They basically just type in their email to access the quote, and there really isn't a ton of personal information in here, so it's totally fine as far as not needing necessarily a password. But they put in their email address, they click login, and then from the login page, this is what they see. And it's all mobile friendly as well. But this is a video quote. This is Brandon right here. So it's got the human element of him. And it's a video. It's about 1.5 minutes of him explaining the quote. And what we do is we take the quote and we put it into an infographic. And this guy, we just sent a home quote because he just wanted a home insurance for now because he's going through a mortgage process. And auto insurance isn't a priority to him right now, so we'll cross-sell him auto later on. So here's an infographic of the information, and what happens is in this video, he could play, and Brandon goes over this infographic with him, addresses any concerns that maybe this customer had, normally that he would address in the email that he would type out, but instead he just talks about it and communicates with and connects with the customer in a different way. I think connects with the customer in a better way. So they're able to see the headlines of the costs. They see that we're independent and we're lots of options. There's a few extra details here for people that are interested. And if they want even more details, the actual quote can be downloaded here from the primary carrier Traveler. So they'll see the actual quote from Travelers here. And if they want to move forward, they just click this button. If they got a question, they click that button, and based on whichever button they click, it creates other sets of things. So that's kind of what that looks like.
So if I'm looking at this now, what I see that the only manual process besides the quote, because that's a given, is Brandon recording a video.
Correct.
It's also him coming in and inputting this data. Now, for those who are not familiar with this type of process, tell us really quick about how long does it take Brandon to do this per quote? Because I think what people see is they see this and they think, man, that's a lot of steps. So if you could say, well, it only takes them this long to do it, or it is a lot of steps and this is what we're doing to fine tune it.
Yeah. So once a customer is put into a particular stage, one of the sequences is for our CSR to actually run the quotes and initially fill out this infographic. So this infographic is basically a fillable PDF with these things as drop downs, and she just does drop downs and fills it out. And she initially fills it out, and then when she completes that task, then Brandon, the actual agent, is given another task that says, hey, just verify that the quote looks good. And he might go in and say it looks great because our CSR is really good and she knows what she's doing. Or he might make some adjustments because she might have made a mistake or didn't know necessarily something. So he finalizes it. And then once he finalizes it, you're right, he creates the video and that's it. So the time that it takes for the CSR, Joy, she runs the quotes and then puts them in here. It's like nothing. I mean, it takes next to no time. It's
minutes, just a couple minutes.
Yeah, literally minutes. And the time it takes him to run this video is less than 2 minutes. And it was taking Joy and Brandon a lot longer than just a few minutes to communicate back and forth that they've done this process. And it was taking Brandon like sometimes up to a half an hour to put a quote together for a customer, to type out all these details, to attach this thing to it. I mean, it was taking a lot of time. And now he can put way more information in a video, connect with the consumer on a human level. Mm-hmm. And and this page isn't Infusionsoft. This is something I built out, but now the email and the communication goes to the customer in an automated way, right away, but it feels still customized and has that human touch because of the video, and they have I have my own little thing that's just for me, and
right.
And it looks beautifully mobile. I don't know if I can show you.
No, probably not. But I think it looks really good. So, but getting back to kind of the automation process, this is actually really helpful. Getting back to the automation process, let me ask you a couple questions here, because I think a lot of people, when they hear about this, they immediately think about bandwidth, but they also start to think about cost, or they get a cost on what it might be, whether it be from Infusionsoft, whether it be from Salesforce, whether it be from any other vendor, and they immediately begin to process how this will work for them. So, can you quantify your cost when it comes to automation versus what it would cost to maybe hire additional agents or CSRs or people who would take on these tasks that automation's handling for you?
Yeah, great question. And this is a huge why. This is but before I even answer the question, I really want to plead with everybody listening to take automation seriously for this reason. Our carriers are paying us less and less every year. Our contracts are being changed. The amount that we're getting paid per policy is less and less every year. Combine that with the fact that we now have more competition, especially in the personal line space, than ever before from InsurTech and all other sorts of companies out there. Our ability to profit is being squeezed, and it's being squeezed hard. And we can either decide to get scared and get out of the business. We can decide to do nothing about it, which is stupid. Or we can lower our overhead. And automation has dramatically lowered our overhead. And here's how I can answer your question, Nick. I have found out that for my CSR, the automation processes that we have, and I don't even have all the servicing automated yet. All I have right now is the renewal and the quoting phase automated. But for the CSR, it saves her 32 hours per quote, per person. And for my agent—
over the lifetime of a customer. It's
a quote, and just during the renewal process.
Okay.
And then for my actual agent, it's saving him just under 30 hours per person. So that allows me to, one, not have to hire as much staff, which is the biggest overhead to any business, is employees. And two, it allows us to handle a much higher bandwidth and more quotes. I mean, as we don't work with a cluster, we had direct appointments with all of our carriers. And when we're seeking another appointment with a carrier, they always want to ask what our book of business is and all that. And then they see our book of business and then they see our staff and they're always like, how do you guys do that? They're like, oh, well, and then we have to go on to explain the automation. It's like nobody can believe the amount of business that we're able to do on a month-to-month basis, like the number of quotes we're able to handle per person. And then nobody believes like our percentage of growth per month. And nobody believes that we can manage that and we're going to have good retention. They just don't believe those numbers that we're telling them versus the amount of staff that we have.
So that leads into the question. I know your position on this, and so you'll probably articulate it a little bit. So without going into too much detail as far as how big your book is, right? That fallacy. Tell us a little bit about the growth that you've had, and tell us about the size of your staff, so that people have some perception on that.
Yeah. So I have one primary agent, Brandon, and one CSR. That's
just one agent, one CSR.
Yep. So I have one agent, one CSR. And right now the agent can handle probably about, and this is just new quotes, along with doing renewals at the same time. We can handle, before we kind of get overloaded, around 60 families a month. Around 60 families a month of new quotes on top of all the new renewals and service work and everything else that we're doing.
Right. So if you're listening to this, and if you have questions, please use the chat box. But if you're listening to this, just put that into perspective into your market. 60 clients in your market, because it's different everywhere you go. And on top of what you're already doing, you're able to handle that kind of bandwidth. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So, and I'm talking about 60 closed is
right.
What we do. So right. We can close 60. We definitely can quote more than 60, but actually closing them, that requires more work, right, to get all that done once they've said, yeah, I want to accept the quote. So we're fortunate enough that we've created more than 60 opportunities per month. But yeah.
Alex wants to know, what percentage of your business comes from your mortgage company?
Over 50%.
So just to get back to that point and taking a step back, I mean, when you first implemented those, now you're at the bandwidth where you can handle 60. Did you find snags or things that held you back from that? Maybe what were those things that you would go back and say, I wish I would have sanded that edge a little bit better. This is something we had to iterate on in our business plan of implementing the automation.
We actually did it backwards in the way that your question's asking. We did the automation first as we were kind of growing and figuring stuff out. One, learning how to even have an insurance agency, because I didn't have experience, neither did Brandon. And we continued to fine tune. And once we felt like, that's the cool thing about having automation or just a customer journey in general. Again, once you have it written down, once you have a process, it is easy for me to go in and make changes and adjustments. And those slight adjustments and changes can be very profitable. But I can't make those adjustments and changes unless I have the processes in place right away. So we fine-tuned it. We made it great. And then as a result of that, we decided, shoot, we should probably pursue some more business opportunities. Because it first started out like we were just quoting people from our mortgage side of our business. And that was really all that we were doing. And then once we got this automation, it's like, man, let's go get more business because we can. And then we became Dave Ramsey ELPs, and we upped our social media game and our SEOs, and we built some relationships with financial planners, and did a bunch of other different things that have helped really increase the amount of business that we've gotten. And we felt confident about that and excited about getting those other opportunities. Because of the automation.
Interesting. So knowing what you know now and talking to agents that maybe haven't implemented their automation, what would you maybe, if you were to start an agency today, where would you start with your automation? Would you do it the same as you did it before? And if not, how would it differ?
I would not do it the same way I did it before. When we started, I started out with the sales stage and the renewal stages, and there's just so many details in that. And I got lost in all the details and all the weeds of that. And it just took a long time. And when I tried to implement it, I tried to get too granular with it, and I had to really scale back. So I wouldn't do it that way again. The way I would do it is write out that customer journey and then look for the low-hanging fruit. Look for the little tasks. Look for the little things that you're doing over and over and over again that you can automate. And I see a question here, how much of your service work is being automated? I would start with that. If I had to do it over, I'd start with service work. And it would be simple, easy workflows. Like if a customer calls in and they say that they want to add a vehicle or remove a vehicle, or we have to change a mortgagee clause or something like that, I would have an internal form in my automation system that has some required fields that I have to obtain. And once the form is filled out, it would start a trigger for something else. Like it would set a task for somebody internally to, hey, they need to change a vehicle. Here's the VIN number, go requote it or whatever it is. Or, hey, they need to change mortgagee. CSR needs to quote or call the mortgage company, whatever it is, a whole bunch of tasks on tasks on tasks or whatever. And then once the tasks got completed, an email or a text message would go right back out to the customer saying, hey, this service item has been complete or something like that. And you could personalize the copy of that email to not make it feel automated. There's lots of ways to do that. But I would start with low-hanging fruit service work that has to be done over and over and over again. Simple, easy stuff to automate internally.
So I think that gets to kind of, Alex had the question of how you're managing those mortgage clause changes or renewals or even after the loan sold. So you basically would recommend, even though you haven't done it yet, the actual service side being automated and basically formulaic.
Yeah, totally. So I would have an internal form and Infusionsoft, and I might even show you something.
I'd have to make you host again, so let me know if you have something you want to show.
I'm trying to think of one that I could show that would be relevant to people. Go ahead and make me host. I'll see if I can figure something out.
Okay.
While you're setting that up, just maybe, Grant, can you speak to where you find or where you place this automation? Do you place the onus on your customer, your CRM to be able to kind of trigger these things, or are you looking for different products that work together? How does that manifest itself so that those things triggers would happen?
Great question. A CRM and an agency management system are not automation, in my opinion. A CRM is a glorified Rolodex, and I didn't want that, and that's why I didn't choose some of the other stuff. And Infusionsoft does way more than just be a glorified Rolodex. And on top of that, an agency management system, it is beautiful in that it does a lot of great things for insurance, but it does not automate a lot of these internal processes, but more importantly, the external communication. So yeah, finding a piece of technology that can integrate with as many other pieces of things as possible is very, very big. And finding a piece of technology that does automation well and is not just a glorified Rolodex is a big deal as well. So yeah, I'm ready. Should I share now, Nick?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so all right. So here's Infusionsoft right now. I just searched for a contact record. It's me. So I have these things that are called internal forms. So I would have a customer, so let's say a customer called in, it was me, and I would just have my somebody fill out a form. And I'm just gonna have a regular form that you guys can just see. And I created these forms, and when this person calls in, all the contact information automatically populates based on me finding them in our system. And then I would have to determine all kinds of different things. Who's the person that's going to be working with them? What type of transaction is it? What type of thing is it? Is it a vehicle change? Is it whatever else? And then I can apply certain things to it afterwards. But essentially, I would do a lot of forms like this for internal service work. And based on how things are put together within that form, you could trigger a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll just create a campaign now to kind of show you guys what that would look like. I can literally build out a service work campaign right now, and you guys would be like, what? That was super easy. So I could say, okay, somebody fills out this internal form, and then after that internal form, I could have it create a sequence of things that I need done. So I'll connect this internal form with this sequence. Now I'm going to take this sequence, I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to say, well, when this internal form is done, I'm going to create a task. And in that task, I'm going to, assign it to somebody. And then I'm going to say, do this thing or whatever it is. And I'm also going to make sure that it gets done by a certain date. I'm going to make sure that there's a certain priority level to it. And I'm going to send an email to the person to let them know that the task got assigned to them. I can merge certain pieces into it. So I can merge the contact's first name and last name. So I can say so-and-so called in or whatever. So that this task would be done. And then I can also say, all right, now that that task is there, once that task is complete, I want to go ahead and start another thing and say, all right, let's go ahead and send an email to the customer saying that this thing was done. And then at the same time, I also want to send them a text message, saying that this thing has been done for them. Right? And then once all those go out, then I can do another thing where I'm going to say, all right, all that's been done. Let's have, so-and-so create another task to do some processes internally to make sure that it was all done and all is well and good. And that's kind of what that would look like. So, you could build this out to however you want, but that's how easy it is to drag and drop an automated workflow for stuff based on an internal form.
Grant, I want you to while we're here, I want you to show, and this isn't for the purpose of intimidating anybody, but I'd like to have you show people something that you have as far as a campaign that maybe is a little bit more complex. And I get it. When people see it, they might get intimidated, and that's not the point. But just to show the capability of what you can do with your automation.
Right. So I just showed you how easy and simple it was to build out a little, workflow. That's super, super simple, easy. And this is workflow that's integrating, and this is huge. This is why I like Infusionsoft. It integrates internally, so I can create tasks for people internally, but I was also externally able to send communication to consumers, right? And I can have like different triggers and delay timers and stuff on it, right? So I can say, oh, I don't want this to happen until so many hours away. Or I can say, you know what, let's wait until so many days before their expiration date or their birth date or whatever it is. Like I can do all kinds of stuff like that. So you can make stuff simple, but like you can really, really build out a lot of stuff and do a lot of different sales stages and a lot of different other things. So here's what our pipeline looks like from the quoting to closing them stage. How many of you guys sometimes have issues getting your insureds to sign documents and different things like that? So this is the detailed look of what ours looks like from quoting to close. So this is kind of like how detailed you can get. And once you start working in Infusionsoft for a while, this actually is really easy, or you can hire somebody to do it for you.
Can you zoom in a little bit on those?
Yeah, sure.
Just so people can see it.
Yep. So, it starts out through the quoting phase based on if they're a mortgage customer or not. And in the quoting phase, it says we're going to wait certain times and send these emails and then create a task for the CSR to run the quotes. She runs the quotes. Then she puts all the information the way it's supposed to be input. And once that task is complete, then it moves over to this other stage, which is quote is reviewed by agent. He reviews it. He has some tasks, so he finalizes that, puts that together, and he records the video. That's part of the task and everything. And then the email goes out to the customer. And based on the type of customer they are, we're going to communicate to them in a different way. If they're an ELP customer, we're going to use Dave Ramsey language. If it's a mortgage referral for one of my mortgage guys, we're going to copy in the mortgage referral person so they know that the quote went out, And then if they decide to accept the quote or if they have questions, then they go into a different place. But then also some of the processes are done too. So if somebody say, yeah, I'm thinking about it, we can put them in a holding stage. If they say, hey, look, we want to move forward, we can collect payment data and we send emails and we have tasks to try to collect that payment data. Once those tasks are complete, it moves them into a different stage. And now they go into purchase info received. And we're going to gather information and go back and forth between gathering the purchase information in the carry system, as you guys are all familiar with, and getting the policy issued and uploading deck pages and applying the proper tags and sending out cards and sending out things to the consumer and making sure that we get the applications sent out and emails going to them saying, hey, e-sign these things. And once all these tasks have been complete and getting this stuff signed from the customer saying, hey, look, you got to e-sign your stuff. we have follow-ups every 7 days or every 2 days or however long it needs to be. Like, dude, you got to sign this document type thing. And then once all that's done, we say applications in, and then we're good to go. If at any time they decided not to purchase, they go into this, and we move them into what's called a loss campaign, and then we try to resell them later on. So that's an example of some of the hardcore details that you can get into with some of the automation.
So just to follow up on those questions, and maybe we've seen the back door now, but when your employees and your coworker and their coworkers are seeing this, how is it presented to them as far as the tasks are concerned, and as far as how do they, is it constantly emailing, hey, they completed their task, you're next? So what's that interface, and how are those communications shared to get to points to Sean's question that's in the chat box?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the beautiful things that I like about Infusionsoft is I customize that. So there are tasks within Infusionsoft that live on the Infusionsoft dashboard. And once they log in, they see all those tasks that have been assigned to them. And when I create tasks, I can determine if I want emails to go to them, because some people like the email notification and some people don't. So I have, 16 employees, and some of my employees, they want that email. And then other employees, they don't want that. And so I customize it based on what the employee wants and how they appreciate it.
So do you customize for each employee to have like a homepage? Because like obviously those tasks have to be brought to them somehow.
Yep. So I customize each employee's dashboard to look the way that they want. And then I customize how the tasks are sent to them based on the way that they want. All the tasks are going to live within the Infusionsoft dashboard. The Infusionsoft has this thing called My Day, and you click on it and it shows you like all the tasks that are assigned to you, all the opportunities that are open, all the sales stages that you're working through, all the stuff that you have to do. And that's where the big savings has come in for my staff internally. And another reason why I don't have to hire a whole bunch of people is I don't have my employees coming in every day and writing down, okay, these are the things I have to do. And I'm not scared my employees are going to forget to do something. They come in, they log in, and they see everything they have to do. They know how long they're going to have to work and how hard they're going to have to work right away. And that saves at least an hour a day from them like writing down a list and crossing things off the list and worrying about them missing any stages. If something gets missed, it's my fault because I didn't create the process for it.
Right. And that was going to be my question, and you answered it beautifully, is, we talk about how this is great from a customer standpoint, but how does it help you with your efficiency from a management standpoint and an employee standpoint? Secondly, I think everybody looks at what you just showed us on a map and they think, man, that looks really, really complicated, and it's almost like they're trying to read Mandarin. But tell us, if you can, take one customer and have them go through that process. How much time is being spent by the agent or by the CSR in doing manual tasks for that? Because I think we see a lot of steps. And so put that into a time measurement. What are people spending time-wise manually doing things, moving tags and following up on tasks? What does that look like from a time management standpoint?
I'll give you an example. Can you make me the...
You're already there.
Okay. So I'm going to show you guys an example when we get our ELP leads or referrals. And a lot of you guys might relate to this because you're getting online leads and referrals from some way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to show you all the stuff that happens in the need to contact phase. So I'll get into that now. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the need to contact phase. So automatically, whenever a customer comes in on our ELP from Dave Ramsey's website, they fill out a form, and we have this third-party integration that automatically puts them into Infusionsoft. All the data that they put into the form goes into Infusionsoft, and they are automatically put into this sales stage. And once they're put into this sales stage, if they're an ELP person, they go over here, and right away, we have a text message string going out to them. And literally within seconds of them filling out the form, if they filled out the form during business hours, text messages are going to them with an introduction saying, hey, I'm your Dave Ramsey endorsed local provider. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And it's a text message that is not like a blast message, but the goal is to connect with them relationally. We know they filled out a form online, so we know that they love this barrier of communication. Because when they filled out that form, they also had our phone number and our address and our email, but they didn't choose to communicate with us. They choose to communicate through the form. So we assume that they like to communicate via text message. So we sent them a question here, and then they respond to that text message 90% of the time. And once they respond to that text message, we're gathering information and data that we need to start quoting. And that all happens automatically without Brandon or anybody from my office doing anything. All he does is he has to wait for somebody to reply to text messages, and then he starts talking to them. If somebody fills it outside of business hours, we're sending a different text message, and it says, hey, this text message is being sent to you automatically. Cool, right? But this is my real number. You can call me or text me on this whenever you like, or you can schedule an appointment with me, and we give them an appointment link, and they can schedule an appointment with us automatically.
So you let them know. You let them know that it's automated.
Yeah, we own the automation. Look, our society can smell BS real quick. So if a text message is going out to them at 2 a.m. when they filled out that form online, we're just going to own that it's automated. One of our recent reviews from somebody who purchased from us mentioned that they loved the automated text messaging in their review. So that was something that was kind of neat. So based on that, the text messages goes out, and after that, emails are being sent to them right away. And right away, the email that goes out to them has options for the consumer or the customer to kind of engage with us. And they can click if they want to schedule an appointment, or if they just want to do it all via email. And based on how they click or based on what they do, then other things happen. If they don't do anything, there's timers and more emails and text messages and a whole follow-up process that happens. So all of this and all of the text messages that happened before require nothing from my staff. All the follow-up, all the initial communication, nothing from my staff. That is a ton of time that's being saved, a ton of time. And based on how they click, then more things are going to happen. And, some of the stuff happens automatically. Some of it's stuff that happened manually where there's some human element involved. But just this whole stage that I just showed you of that follow-up and that initial need to contact phase, arguably one of the more important stages, that requires a lot of time and a lot of work, requires nothing of my employees. So did that answer your question?
It did. It did tremendously. Thank you. Mm-hmm. We all
just need to take a breath. All right, so we've talked a lot about like this automation and your ability to customize it. But one of the things that's obviously you got to keep in mind is the counterpoint, right? Like, how has maybe the automation, you talked a little bit about the fact that you've had one review that said you're affected, but how, in what ways has it affected your or injured your brand? Have you seen any kind of blowback or pushback from people who are a little bit older? And maybe that you can get into too, your client demographic. Where are you maybe focused more on younger people who are more in tune with this stuff, or are you have you seen an effect on your brand? I guess is the bigger question.
Only positive impacts. But that's because we're very, very intentional with the automated communication that goes out to consumers. We are thinking twice about the timing of when it gets sent out, if it's getting sent out during business hours or not. We are thinking intelligently about the timing of when automation goes out based on the response time. So if it's they're filling out a form and we're responding right away, like within seconds, that might feel automated. So anything that might feel automated, we're owning the fact that it's automated. We're making those emails and things look pretty, look like a constant contact email with like buttons and pictures and images. But if something's being sent during business hours that, let's say, we'll give a service example because somebody asked a question about that. If I completed a service request for somebody at 3 p.m. in the middle of the weekday and that task happened, I'm going to send an email that doesn't look or feel automated. It's going to look like I typed it out on my own, and it's going to look like I'm extremely efficient and love to follow through with my customers, which we do love to follow through with our customers. We just don't need to do it manually. So the automation has dramatically impacted our brand on a positive level. So, yeah.
Perfect. I'm gonna do something that's the first ever in Collabcast history, and I'm gonna take a live question by unmuting somebody. Alex has been begging to be unmuted, so Alex, I'm gonna unmute you here in just a moment. When I give you the thumbs up on my screen because my computer's lagging, then you're going to know that you're good to go. If I can do this here, but I do reserve the right to cut you off. So let's keep it short. Go ahead.
Grant, hey, What was your learning curve on Infusionsoft? Like, it seems to be pretty complicated, but like, what's your learning curve to become where you are now versus when you started with Infusionsoft?
I've been working in Infusionsoft now for over 3 years. I feel like I'm really good at it, but I also feel like I'm pretty tech savvy. I understand that most agency owners are not, one, tech savvy, or two, necessarily have the time to want to build this stuff. So I don't really know how to answer or quantify that learning curve and the amount of time, because I think I have a bend towards this stuff and I really like doing it. However, I can tell you that I didn't build a lot of the stuff that I showed you. And when I first started, I didn't know it all, right, when I was into Infusionsoft. So I just hired somebody who knew about my business and brand, and then also knew how to build stuff in Infusionsoft. It was Capsule 5 is the name of the company, and they built it all out for me. So.
And
Yeah.
Capsule 5, to answer Sean's point, that's who IAOA has a relationship with. They do a lot of build-outs and campaigns for IAOA members. So if you are saying, you know what, this is great, this is awesome, I know I can map out a journey, I know what I want my customers to think and feel, and I know their behaviors, this is how I want it to match my brand. If you know that, then I would encourage you. If you don't want to take on the time or the learning curve, hire those guys at Capsule 5. We'll put a link in this chat box, but they already do a lot with IAOA. They also have if you're a smaller operation, below 4 employees, they have a particular program called Agent Up, which helps you kind of get the ball rolling with Infusionsoft. It's kind of Infusionsoft Lite, and it has some built-in templated automation workflows in there already. So I'll put that information in the chat box, but you guys can go to that. And while we're doing that, Adam's going to take the next question.
Well, I want to put Nick on the spot for a second. So back to my point about making sure that you write out your customer journey. You can't start any of this building yourself or hiring somebody to build it without first mapping out that customer journey. You can't hire Capsule 5 and say, hey, automate my business. And they're going to say, well, what do you want me to automate? Nick, you recently hired Capsule 5. And correct me if I'm wrong, you basically did that. You wrote out a journey and you said, this is what I want to be automated, do it. And
yeah.
How did they do?
They did great. So we've been on Infusionsoft now for a few years. We used it to automate our ELP process, and we knew we needed to do more. But we also knew in working, and we built out the ELP process ourselves, knowing how much time that took and how labor intensive it was, and just knowing the fact that we're not pros at it, we decided to hire Capsule 5. And basically what I did is I wrote down and I said, okay, I'm going to automate my new business follow-up from onboarding to renewals and cross-selling. And then we're also going to build in some real simple automations like happy birthday and, review requests and all that stuff. And it's been fantastic. You're absolutely right. It started with me sitting down and saying, okay, based on my customer demographic, based on who is doing business with my agency, if they do this, what do I want to have happen next? And if they choose one of 3 options, what goes on from that point? And so it's been a lot of back and forth. We're live with what we're doing, and they were fantastic. There's a reason why we endorse them as IAOA. And just to clarify, we get no money from Capsule 5. Dave Jackson will back me up. So when we promote them, it's not because we're getting anything on the back end. We get no money from them. We just believe in the product and know that what they're doing is fantastic.
So just to get back, I think that's a really great insight into how those things are working. But I guess maybe to your point is, how do you, to your point on creating and crafting this journey, have you had to revisit it? Have you had to edit it? And what have you done to kind of set up processes to go back and review that to make sure you're giving your customer the experience that they want from their side, as opposed to maybe what you think they want?
Oh, yeah, such a great question, man. Okay, so if you haven't noticed, our world changes all the time, and it's changing quick. So our businesses also need to change. So I am going back to our customer journeys and reevaluating our processes on a very high level annually, and on a very lower level, at least monthly or quarterly. So I have meetings with my team, and I say, hey, look, Here's our processes. What do you like? What do you not like? How can we change things? And I'm constantly reading books, constantly studying how people react to things, being a behavioral scientist. And when I learn more about people, when I learn more about our society, when I see how things are changing, I'm constantly going back to my customer journey and changing it so that I am relevant to where society is at and or ahead of the curve of changes that are coming. And if you're not doing that as a business owner, you're going to be left behind, and you will definitely be left behind in the insurance world because it's changing all the time. So yeah, I make adjustments to it a lot. And if you don't have it written out, there's nothing you can make adjustments to. So then you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, floating at the wind, hoping that you make adjustments as you need to, instead of being proactive about it.
Here's a question that comes up all the time, Grant. Maybe you can address what your process is. We know that for the most part, most agency management systems are closed off. So how do you get around the double entry, the E&O exposure? How do you get around, what is your process for taking what's in your management system, what comes in through Ivans, et cetera, and putting that into Infusionsoft, and then do you have to manually map that out a little bit once it's in Infusionsoft?
Most of the contact information for customers gets put into Infusionsoft automatically, not through our agency management system, but just through different forms or based on the way that they have come to us as an agency.
So they're already there before they hit the management system is what you're saying.
Yeah. So the contact record is there, and updating the contact record based on the information that's happening on their insurance policy, some of it is manual, which some of you guys are going to be like, oh, geez, I can't believe you do that. It's like 5 fields. The only thing that we really update is the carrier that they're with, the cost of the carrier, and the expiration date, and that's really it. Because all I want to put in Infusionsoft are things that I want to automate from those fields. When a customer calls in and they want information about their policy, I go to the AMS. I don't go to Infusionsoft. You know what I'm saying? I let the agency management system do what the agency management system does. That said, it'd be beautiful if it all lived in one place. And I know that there's things out there like Tech Canary and other stuff that live on the Salesforce platform. But the reality is Salesforce, I literally had a call with Salesforce yesterday. What's today, Wednesday? Monday. I literally had a call with Salesforce Monday and showed them. I was on a high-level call with somebody there and showed them what I do in Infusionsoft. I'm like, look, can you guys do this? Like, yeah, totally, we can do that. But this is how much it's going to cost you. And the cost on an annual basis was way more than what I'm currently paying for Infusionsoft. So I would love for it to all live in one place, but it doesn't. And the fact that it doesn't has zero E&O exposure and really doesn't take a whole lot of time to do. I create a task for my CSR that after the policy is in effect to update a small handful of fields in Infusionsoft based on what has been downloaded from Ivans, and that's it.
So maybe this gets to some of that automation, but Alex followed up with another question about as far as, are you automating that mortgage change and making those renewals, making sure renewals get paid? So that AMS to your sales funnel, that corroboration, maybe I feel like that question's getting to that. So maybe you could talk about that specific process. How would that look in your Infusionsoft, tree that we saw earlier? How have you set that up?
So I'm not yet automating very many service things. So I haven't done that yet. So I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to answer that question. But I can tell you that Infusionsoft has a plethora of triggers and sequences that can be done. And there's all kinds of things that you can do and integrate with other things. Infusionsoft allows you to send out communication externally via email, via text message, tasks to call, tasks to update information, tasks to do things. And based on a task being completed or a goal being met, and in this case, the goal might be, the mortgagee change, you can confirm that it happened. You can have follow-up built in every so often. You can make a follow-up happen every day for your CSR to follow up to make sure that this thing got done, and the follow-up stays until it does get done. But once it gets done, they move out of that sequence. So there's ways to do that, and it's all built around certain goals. So you determine what your automation goal is, and once that automation goal gets met, they're kicked out of it. And things can have multiple goals. So there's several different ways to cut it. And one of the questions here, any issues with email deliverability with Infusionsoft? No. I actually have an integration that Infusionsoft allows so that my emails are getting sent directly from my Office 365. And this integration works with Google or any Exchange or service server that you guys use for your emails. So Infusionsoft initiates the email, but the email actually does come from my Office 365 and shows up in my sent items and the whole works.
Perfect. Alex has another question, so we're going to let him go live here since his last question was so good. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I kind of forgot what my last one was.
Oh, man. Oh, that's the last.
No, I made a list. Grant, what % of your clients actually know you personally by name?
Again, I have not quoted any of my customers from the very beginning of the insurance agency. So I've never quoted any of them during that process. As the business owner, I'm at a point right now where I'm not engaging with customers on a daily basis. However, I'm from Arizona. I love to talk to people. I love to talk, as you guys can tell from this webinar. I shake a lot of hands. So there's a lot of people who know who I am, and I know who a lot of people are. I love relationships. So there's a large amount of people that work with Stewardship because of me and because of who I am and the perception that I build as a result of that. So I hope that answers it.
If I could ask, right? So it seems like you have a really good affinity for like technology. Is that the case? Like, so do you have like a technology background per se, or did you just take to Infusionsoft, or do you come from a background of like really kind of leveraging like stuff like this? Because to me, it looks confusing and intimidating. So,
dude, I went to a small Bible college in Arizona and played basketball there. My major was Christian ministries and business administration. I have zero technology background. Infusionsoft looks complicated, but it's not after a period of time. And you cannot let the intimidation of how something looks stop you from doing something if you know you need to do it.
And even if you can't do it, that's why you find somebody who can.
Right. If you can't do it, then you find somebody else to do it and you do it. I mean, we can't be intimidated by that. There's plenty of people out there that'd be intimidated by owning an insurance agency. It's really not that tough. You get the LLC, you get your EIN, you get your bank accounts, and you start building relationships, and you get licensed, and you take a test and all that stuff. I mean, anything can look intimidating, but the reality is I'm not special. I'm just a normal dude who has goofy teeth and a weird looking forehead.
That's true. And dark eye.
Yeah, I got raccoon eyes. Like, there's nothing special about me, man. I'm not like a ridiculously intelligent guy. I'm just a normal dude who likes to cheer for the Cubs and cried when they won the World Series last year. Like, there's nothing special about me, and you can't look at all the stuff that I've done and say, "Oh, I could never do that." No, yes, you can. I mean, as Lou Holtz would say, they put their pants on the same way we do. Like, you guys all
put your input. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's amazing input. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. You're muted again, but thank you. Well, we've been here for a little over an hour, and I feel like we can go a little bit longer. So I don't want to keep everybody too long. We're going to try to get to some more questions. I'll be very honest. I'm going to rely on Adam to get to the questions because my computer's going a little slow here. But if you've got some final questions for Grant, please put them in the chat box. We want to address them. That's the whole value of doing this live. Grant is, like I said, it was mentioned before, Grant was one of the founders of IAOA. He's a really close friend of mine. I'm grateful. We're actually going to a Notre Dame game in Chicago and South Bend here in September, and I'm stoked for that. But Grant, just a couple last questions before we go as we wait for people to kind of type in some final thoughts here. How do you automate your process now? How do you determine what's working and what's not working? And, do you have a system in place for that?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the question by reversing the question back to you. If you are not automating, how do you know what's working and not working? Without automation, you are going to have a hard time being able to track stuff the way that I do. Because of automation, I know exactly how many people are in each sales stage. I know how long it takes for customers to go through each sales stage. Because of automation, I know how many emails get opened. For every single customer, I can tell if they've opened the email, if they've clicked on it, how long they were looking at the email, if it was a unique open or if it was an automatic open based on some program that they have. I can track all of that. I know how many people we win during the sales stage and how many people we lose. I know how quick my internal staff is completing tasks. I know how many people have overdue tasks and how many people are on time with tasks. I mean, I know so much data and information that's available to me on one screen, on one dashboard, because of automation, because I wrote out what I wanted my external customer journey to look like and my internal map to look like in sequences, and then I built automation for both of them. So I know almost everything that's happening internally and externally and track it all.
So, we got two questions here. Patrick, who is my drumming brother from San Diego, he wants to know, in the initial stages of a relationship, the biggest challenge that we face is getting prospects to complete our questionnaire, either done over the phone or a PDF doc, so that we can do a superior job in insuring their home and autos. So how do you handle this? How do you overcome this obstacle?
I try to make the initial stage of us gathering information from a customer the lowest barrier to entry possible. First thing is we want to do is we want to connect with them where they're at. So we attempt to communicate with them in a couple of different ways: a text message, a call, and an email. And based on how they respond to that determines how we ask them the questions that we need to properly quote them. And if they're going to start out with text, then we're going to start out with some low barrier to entry questions to gather information to get that quote out to them. If they're going to start out in email, we're going to also ask them that way. But here's the beautiful thing. People have picture phones. Almost everybody does. And a lot of times we just ask them to take a picture of their deck page. We educate them on that process of what that looks like. We ask them to take a picture and text it over to us or send it to us via email. And then we have all the data that we need. So rather than having our own internal questionnaire with 30 questions on it, that's inconvenient for them, that they don't know how to fill out, that's foreign to them, I try to meet them where they're at and try to gather the data from them in a way that's easy, in a way that they're used to, and educate them on the best way to get that from us.
Right. I mean, if you were dating, when you went when you were going back and you were, approaching what is now your spouse, you didn't hit him over the head with, who you are. You maybe started off simple and small. You weren't, in the same process, the first conversation you have with a customer, you're not asking them for their VIN number. You're trying to build rapport. So that's what you're talking about when you talk about barrier to entry. Is that correct?
Yeah, my first text message to my wife was not, "Hey, how many kids do you want to have, and what do you plan on doing when you get married?" I mean, my first text message was a joke to her that said, "Hey, I'm a Scorpio who loves biking and I've never been laid." I mean, that's a quote from Tommy Boy.
What a square!
So I just I said something like that to get her to laugh, and I built a relationship. And once I learned more about her, then I continued in that relationship. So automation is beautiful in that it allows you to attempt several different ways of communication all at once, and then track and determine the best way for them to respond. So as people are going through our customer journey and all these sequences, we know how they respond and in what ways they respond, and then they're automatically tagged saying, "Hey, this person prefers email. Hey, this person prefers text. This person prefers in person. This person prefers phone." And every one of our customers has one of those preferred contact tags based on how they're responding, and then we meet them where they're at when we need something from them that way.
Mariah wants to know. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
I was going to jump on that actually question, because you talked earlier in the podcast about, you did a little research, and Mariah asked the question, how did you come up with your customer journey? You talked about researching kind of human interaction and those type of things. That sounds a lot like homework. But maybe you could point directions to what resources you used in developing that, from even in the homework perspective or just experientially, on how, when you develop that customer flow.
Okay, so again, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. There's nothing special about me. Everybody can do exactly what I'm doing, and it's not doesn't take like a high level anything. Just do it. And I think that question is kind of twofold. It's one, how do you create a customer journey? And then two, how do you create it to be relevant to our society, right? So creating a customer journey is simple. All of you know the sales stages. Start with that. Write them all down. Need to contact, contact made, gathering information, quoting, quotes sent, whatever those just write them down. It takes 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and you can write it on your arm with a Sharpie. It doesn't matter. No excuse. Write down the sales stages. Okay, now take a little time. Work hard. Take some time out and work hard and put your nose to the grindstone and think about the details now that happen in all those stages. All it takes is time. It doesn't take a rocket science degree to write out a customer journey and figure out what those stages are and then what the details of those stages are. You guys all know that.
And those details are going to be unique to the agency anyways. What you do at Stewardship is not necessarily what Mariah is going to do at Oakview. And
I could not write Mariah's customer journey for her if she paid me $1 million. I mean, I could probably fake something, but it's not going to be Mariah's customer journey. I mean, it's unique to her. And that's the beautiful thing about it is you asked Alex, how many of my customers know me? You know what? Whether they personally know me or not, they do know me because my brand and my business is in every single who I am as a person is in every single one of those touch points in my customer journey. And all of my employees, all the automated communication is happening in a way that I would want because I mapped out that customer journey ahead of time. Now, the second part of the question, how do you make sure that you're doing it that's relevant with society? How do you make sure that you're doing it in a way that works? Just read books. And guess what? I don't like to read. Really, the only thing that I read on a daily basis is, Bleacher Report and the Bible. And that's more of just because I enjoy it. The other stuff that I have to read for business-wise is just personal discipline. And I just do audiobooks. And then I just do it at 2.0 speed. It comes through C-3PO speaking at really quick rate. And then I retain it a lot better. I just go on road trips and hit play when I'm in the car. And that's it. It doesn't take a ton of work. And I'm reading all these books on all these other people who are anthropologists and work at Harvard
right. And the other part is just open your eyes and look around and see how do you respond to things? What are your behaviors? How do you buy things? How do you engage with companies? What companies do you like to engage with and why? What drives you to be attracted to them? And then to go and do likewise, implement some of the similar strategies and find those things and then test it. Say, there might be things that, and I'm sure you've experienced this. You did an email a certain way and maybe it didn't really work or didn't get the traction that you wanted. And then you changed it. So you're observant to how it's responding, how people are responding to it. And you're just making tweaks along the way. It's never going to be correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, but your sequence, your customer journey is never complete. It's never going to be complete.
Never. I hated the results that we were getting when we were sending people quotes, which is what probably most people send quotes right now. They send an email with some numbers, with some details, and an attachment. It just didn't work well for us. I did not get the results that I wanted. So what did I do? I created a web page so that people could go into and log in, and now they're connecting with us with video. They're seeing the quote in an infographic that's a fillable PDF that meets them where they're at. They can view it mobily. They can click a link from a text message rather than relying on email. So I completely changed the way that we were sending quotes to people, and now our numbers have dramatically changed. I'm very, very happy with how people are responding to quotes now as a result of that change that I made. And guess what? I could have never made that change if I didn't map out the journey and I didn't automate that sales stage.
How many customers did you lose in 2016?
You love this stat. So we have a thing.
I love it.
We have a thing called controlled retention that we track. We don't track when we lose somebody because they sold a house or they moved a state and we don't insure in that state. We only control the number of customers that we've lost as a result of them just switching to another insurance company. And last year in 2016, our controlled retention rate was 2.
Not 2%.
2 customers.
2 people.
2 people, yeah, in 2016.
One CSR.
Yeah, 1 CSR.
1 agent.
Yeah. And in 2017 so far, we've had a little less positive numbers.
Well, we won't go there.
I'll tell you, it's been 4.
Oh wow.
A nuts and bolts question to get to your website. Are you hosting that personally, those websites where you logged in, like you showed us there? Are you hosting that on your own website, or is that also a vendor that you've automated through?
So this is going to now intimidate some people even more. I hired a developer and I developed that application myself. It's something that I wanted. I mapped out what I wanted the customer experience to look like. And I found a developer and said, hey, make this. I paid him money and he made it.
Let me bullet point this for you. Let me put the headline on this. Who cares, right? If you're serious about it, you have to, not who cares about who made it, but who cares what the process was. If you're serious about communicating and doing business the way business is done in 2017 and 18, you have to make an investment. And whether that's hiring vendors or people to come alongside it, if you can't do it yourself, the point is you have to make the investment. You have to.
Right. And look, here's the reality. Like, I spent way more money with Capsule 5 than any of you guys will ever have to spend. You can thank me for the cheap prices that Capsule 5 has now, because they've taken what they built for me and then cookie cuttered it. It doesn't take them much time, and then they get to charge you guys less for it. And the same is true of this quoting thing. Like, I paid this developer to do it. I mean, I could white label it and sell it to you guys too, and you guys could pay me a monthly subscription or something. I can find a way.
There's no self-promotion in IAOA.
Right.
No self-promotion in IOA. That's rule number one. But bottom line is, like, you can find these resources to do this stuff. It's not like, oh man, like, I could never do that. Yes, you could. You can find ways.
Perfect. We have a couple other questions here, so we're not going to take any more questions because we want to respect Grant's time. He's given us an hour and 15 minutes, and I apologize, Grant. I'm sorry. I knew this might go long. That's what she said. But I wanted to we're going to cut the questions off here.
Sean had one just really quickly. Do you have to get a green light from a client to send text in case there's, like, mobile rate fees incurred?
The rules and laws in the state of Arizona are, if I'm going to send a blast text messages as a marketing campaign, I do have to get the green light. We don't do those text messages. Our text messages are personal, that are attached to a transaction or to them reaching out to us first. So, yep, no, we're fine. So far, of the thousands upon thousands of text messages we've sent out, we've literally only had one person say they don't want to be text messaged.
Does that law sound legit to you, Adam?
No, it's fake. No, I'm kidding. Sure it does. And just to the point, are you able to then through Infusionsoft just unclick them and say no more text to this person? Is that a simple fix?
Yeah, I just move their phone number from one field to the next, and if there's not a phone number in that one particular field, the text message will fail and it won't send. So, done.
Very cool.
Can you ask Patrick's question? I believe it's above Sean's, or I can't get to it.
Okay, so Patrick asks, I think he took the one. It was about the initial stages of the relationship and being able to complete the barriers to entry. I think he talked on. And then thanks. Sorry, one more question. I didn't find that. Thank you. Thank you for the prior answer. Nowadays, carriers are offering so many different options. How do you handle those carrier-specific coverages options at a time of quote presentation or application?
Yep.
What program do you use to create those fillable infographics?
So the first thing is, I've identified that there's three types of people in the world. There's one that just want headlines and headlines only. They just want to know how much it's going to cost, and they don't really care. And then there's the second type of person who wants to know the cost, but they also want to know a few details. Some of the coverage options, and those coverage options for the most part are standard throughout. And then there's the third type of person, which is extremely rare, that wants all the details. They want to know the numbers, they want to know the bullet points, and they want to know all the details about it. So what I do is in that infographic, I make the price the biggest number so that those people who are person number one can just look at those prices and then that's it. Then I make the bullet points underneath that about some of the coverage options, make sure that they're coverage type options that are similar across the board. Every policy has a deductible. Every policy has a limit of amount of coverage or something like that, or a yes or a no for this type of coverage. So I list those out, and it's the same for every policy. And then is what happens for the super detailed person. The quote that we're recommending, we will, again, upload into that website the actual quote from the carrier with every single detail on it so that they can check it out for their own self, should they want to do it. Now, here's the reality. A very, very small percentage of people even ever click that download button to download the super, super detailed quote. So although your question is good in that how do you manage these people with all these different options, the reality is people don't want that many options. Make it simple for them.
Yep. I agree. Well, Grant, thank you. Thank you for dedicating your time. Thank you for giving out information that you didn't have to give out, divulging, information that you're implementing and using. I respect the snot out of you. I think you know that. I appreciate you. You guys, this recording will be available in the coming days. You guys can watch it again, share it with your team if you'd like. But we just want to say again, collectively, Grant, thank you so much. Adam, do you have any closing statements?
No, just I'm floored, and man, I gotta get to work. So thanks so much, Grant. And man, I'm gonna be re-listening to this, and hopefully everyone who's here and those who listen to the recording enjoyed as well.
I'm grateful for the thanks. It's an honor to even have a platform like this to communicate with you guys. Happy to share any of this information that I'm able to. So it's not that big of a deal. I think you guys are giving me more credit than it's worth. Seriously. Look, even if you watch this and you're not a fan of automation, at the very least, write down your customer journey, write down your internal employee journey.
If you want to mail stuff, just have a process for doing it, right? It's all about the process.
We automate our mailing too, Nick. Don't worry about that. All the birthday cards get sent in the mail automatically. But the bottom line is, it does not take anything but time and hard work, which every single one of you guys have because you started your agency on that. Time and hard work to write down your agency. And I'll tell you something that somebody told me. My grandfather said, find people with gray hair and wrinkly skin and ask them questions. And I asked a question to a guy who is a billionaire.
Dave Jackson?
No.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted. I'm sorry.
But I asked a question to a multi-billionaire, to a guy that owns several successful companies and then sold them. Very, very, very intelligent guy, super, super rich. And I asked him this question. I said, okay, and this was when I was 29 years old. I said, look back at 29-year-old self and give yourself advice at 29-year-old self. What would that advice be as a business owner? And he said this: get processes. Write down processes and make systems for them. And he looked me in the eyes with like wide eyes and like a vein popping out of his head, like how hugely important that was. And I'm like, dude, this guy, he's older, he's been there, he's smart, and he knows what he's doing. I'm going to do it, And so I'm begging with you, I'm pleading with you the same way that old man did to me. Write down your processes and create systems to implement those processes however you can. If you don't do this, you will be left behind. This sounds scary, but in 5 years, I genuinely believe many of you who are listening to this won't have an insurance agency anymore. It is changing and changing quick, so you guys better get changing with it. Start with writing down your processes.
Ouch.
Hurts the feelings.
Well, with that, geez, okay, I guess we're done. No, thank you so much again, Grant. You guys have a fantastic night. We are gonna end the recording now.